But Maxi, this is actually a question I want to ask because obviously I used to like get eczema fucking real bad, mate. It used to like be on my arms. This is how I started working with Biospan, and obviously I managed to cure it by the diet that you told me to do. We're working with Dorian, one of your nutritionists, but since then I'm still trying to figure out like what is the perfect diet for me, but I don't really know how to like find the information out there because I read one book which tells me that carbohydrates are the end of the world, then I read another which is saying you shouldn't eat too much protein, then I read another which is saying like low protein, high fat, blah blah blah, and you just get all these different things shooting at me, mate. So how do I decipher what is like a good diet for me?
Do you know about Weston Price?
I think you've told me to read him. Is it Physical and Nutritional Degeneration?
Nutritional and Physical Degeneration. So I was reading this when I was in university, and this was a book that changed my life. It's in fact, I don't have it here because I actually gave it away to a team member at Biospan, and this is essentially a book which shows how wild people live, because wild people, so like modern day tribes and like humans, we have completely different diseases. So people who live in the West get really sick. So America, for example, spends the most amount of money on healthcare, but it's not number one in the world in terms of health. And then you have like loads of modern day tribes and things like that. You have like the Maasai, you have like the Hadza, you have even the Amish people. And in fact, there was a really good study not very long ago. It was about 400,000 Amish people. And among 400,000 people, there wasn't a single case of autism. There wasn't a single case of diabetes, and there wasn't a single case of asthma. Now think about this. Like in the modern day world, you get autism as like one case per every 100 people. And so this is not a thing that ever really used to happen. I read this book a while ago. It was called Nutritional and Physical Degeneration. And the reason I read this is because I was watching people online who were following carnivore diets, they're following quite ancestral ways of eating, and they kept bringing this guy's name up, Weston Price. I couldn't spell it at first because how do you spell Western? It's like Western, and there's Weston, and then Price, just like money. And so I bought this book, and this is quite a heavy-duty book when you're reading through it because it's essentially like a scientific study. But I was going through each chapter one by one, and the first chapter was it's essentially this dentist, this guy, Weston Price. He wanted to find out why indigenous people, or rather how their teeth are. Because in the Western world, during the time, people were getting tuberculosis, which is not a problem that we deal with nowadays. When I say tuberculosis, most people have no idea what that is. Basically, in the 1900s, there was like a huge problem with a disease called tuberculosis, and we basically don't have this issue today, so it's not really a problem. But back then, it was a real issue, and this was towards the start of the 1900s and end of the 1800s. And everyone's teeth were getting really fucked up because nowadays we can have like braces, we have all sorts of, we have braces, we have cosmetics, you can get veneers and, just like rip your teeth out surgery. And this is really wonderful thing, like the way we've managed to mechanic it. But he was wondering why it was happening because at the time you couldn't really do that. If you lose your teeth, you're fucked. Like, you're just an ugly bastard. You've got no teeth left and like it's gone. There's no way around it. So he was wondering, is this a problem that actually happens with other people? So he was going to Switzerland. But what he found out along the way was not only did these people have perfect teeth, so there was nothing wrong with their teeth, they had wide faces, wide arches, no cases of braces, no cases of like cavities or anything. They had perfect health. And so Weston was visiting Switzerland, he was visiting North America, Africa, Australia, all these random different places, just basically living with wild humans. It's just imagine like us. But imagine we were just like raised in the wild and like we had to eat the food around us. And as I was reading this book, I was just basically learning that these people didn't get sick. Like they'd never heard of heart disease. They'd never heard of cancer. And a lot of them were eating loads of meat. Loads and loads of meat. In fact, Weston Price, there's a really good article about him. He was trying to see if there was any vegan populations, trying to find them. And all he found was cannibals. So he found an island full of people, and it was full of tribe members. And when they couldn't get meat, they would eat other tribe members from another tribe who they were forcing to gather fish for them. And so this book.
I really see Yeah, sorry, Maxi. I think the way of looking at through evolution is so important. It was the first time it clicked for me was I read a book called Why Buddhism is True by Robert Wright, and he's an evolutionary psychologist. And at first, I never would have thought of, like, we are humans that have been evolved to live out in the wild. We're not meant to be in these houses like this with all this safety around us. We're meant to be in an environment where we're outside and our body's having to adapt and we're eating from all the natural resources. I remember first reading about evolution, I was like, that is how our health needs to be. That's how our state of mind needs to be looked after.
Yeah, it's really interesting. You know what? You know Dorian. Do you know what he told me before, which stuck with me? He said, evolution is to biology what string theory is to physics. So evolution essentially pieces together the rules of biology and why everything exists. And I think evolution is, you're absolutely right. Evolution is like the best way to understand health in general. So the last time we were vegan, we were swinging from trees 2.5 million years ago. We were a species called Australopithecus. And then we became like Homo habilis, Homo erectus, and eventually Homo sapiens. You know, there's Neanderthals as well. Over the course of like 2.5 million years. And during this time, our brain grew from 500 cubic centimeters to 1,500 cubic centimeters during its largest time, which is about 40,000 years ago. We developed canines. Our colons shortened. So the thing about carnivorous animals is they have very short colons, unlike herbivores. Herbivores have very large colons, so they can ferment food. And so this is called the energy expenditure hypothesis. The idea is, our colons became smaller, and so therefore our bodies had more energy they could expend on our brains, because the brain is like 5% of the body's weight, but it spends like 25% of energy, something like that. I might not be paraphrasing it correctly, but during this period, we shortened our colons, so we were able to have more energy for our brain, supposedly. We discovered fire, which is the first form of energy, so it took us more than, from what we understand, like another 300,000 years to discover, like steam power, oil, or anything like that. So we discovered fire, and that was quite significant. So we were able to start cooking foods. We were able to digest some foods easier. And have you read Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker?
Yeah, I've read Why We Sleep. It's an amazing book.
Really, really, really good book. And so in that book, he talks about basically our sleep as well. So we stopped because we were able to sleep by fire, and that was able to stay off predators. Supposedly, we were able to get more REM sleep, which allowed our brains to grow. Anyway, so due to certain factors, such as eating more animal foods, which have nutrients which we didn't have from plant foods, so it has the omega-3s, it has the zincs, it has the carnosines, all these other foods, having better sleep, discovering fire, and shortening our colons, we're able to essentially grow into human beings, and that's who we are today. Yeah, anyway, so basically...
So why do you think there's all this propaganda going on? Oh, sorry, Maxi. Yeah, carry on.
No, go on.
Why do you think there's all this propaganda going on about like against meat then? Why is all the veganism getting pushed in that? What do you think the reason behind it is? Because I hear it all the time. It's like you eat too much red meat and it's bad for you, and you hear it's all propaganda against meat. It's like too much protein is bad for you. Like, where do you think that's coming from?
This is a big one to unpack. This is, I think a big portion of it is our society is quite matriarchal nowadays, and I do believe it's basically an emotional argument in the most part, because it essentially in the 1940s and in the Eastern world today, it's still common sense that meat is good for you. It's only in the Western society that they say that meat is bad for you. So in the Western world, you can have correlational studies which show that as you eat more meat, basically you die faster. But they don't say that when they're recording this, they're not counting the burger bun above and the bottom of the meat and the soda with it, which is called healthy user bias. And in places like Asia, the correlational studies actually show the exact opposite. It shows as you eat more meat that you actually live longer. And the country with the highest life expectancy in the world is Hong Kong, and it also has the highest meat consumption in the world. And so, over these past 100 years, there's been a lot of different things they've been trying to say about nutrition and diet. So in 1951, that's when the whole thing started about cholesterol and saturated fats, which makes absolutely no sense. So do you know about Ansel Keys?
Yeah, was that the guy? But there was a study, wasn't there, that came around at some point, and they swapped around. Was it the sugar industry paid off the industry to swap the thing around to say fat was actually bad for you and carbs were good for you? And then Ansel Keys was the guy that was pushing the narrative of high carbohydrate, low fat diet.
Yeah, so I don't know about the sugar industry thing, but it sounds about right. It's like that seems to be what goes on as you learn more about the industry. You literally learn everyone just pays everything off. But so Ansel Keys, during the 1950s, basically heart disease started increasing quite a bit, and there was this guy named Ansel Keys, and he was, I'm trying to figure a term. It's he was an epidemiologist. Sorry, I haven't slept very well last night, just because I'm working out quite late. So he was an epidemiologist, and he wanted to find out why people were getting heart disease. And so he did a 22-country research, and he picked out 7 countries out of 22. So basically, imagine doing this big research study and cherry-picking the ones that fit your hypothesis. And so he built a hypothesis that saturated fat and dietary cholesterol cause heart disease, but he didn't include countries like France, which don't fit the mold, because France has the highest saturated fat and cholesterol consumption in Europe and has the lowest rates of heart disease. And so he didn't include these things. Anyway, when he released the study, everyone just basically started riding the study to the end. So they basically started saying low fat this, low saturated fat that, and the government basically started enforcing guidelines saying, reduce your fat, reduce your cholesterol. And what ended up happening is over the next 50 to 60 years, heart disease actually ended up skyrocketing. So it made the exact opposite effect, because heart disease never came from saturated fat and cholesterol. In fact, the thing that a lot of people don't know is your dietary cholesterol doesn't change your serum cholesterol. So if you eat dietary cholesterol like eggs, it doesn't actually change how much cholesterol is in your blood, because the cholesterol in your blood is dictated. Well, the LDL cholesterol, which is the bad one, LDL is actually there to help you. So LDL helps with inflammation and helps healing the body. So for example, let's say you fall over, and let's say you scratch your arm. So let's say you fall over in the street and you scratch your arm, and you're getting, like when you get like that white stuff on your skin, and then you get scabs over it. You've experienced that before, right? So that white stuff is cholesterol.
Yeah. When you get like a proper scab and it starts coming all white in that.
That's cholesterol. So you have calcium on top of that cholesterol. Now, what if you went to a doctor and you said, Doctor, I keep falling over and I keep getting this white stuff on my skin. And then they told you, well, stop eating cholesterol. That doesn't make sense. They should be telling you, well, stop fucking falling over. Stop falling over. And that's essentially the same thing happening inside so I'm not a cardio specialist by any means. However, from what I understand and what I've seen, essentially you get inflammation inside the artery lining. And the inflammation, with the inflammation, you get cholesterol on top of that, and then you get calcium on top of that, which actually creates the clots inside. And so it's not the cholesterol, it's actually the inflammation inside it. So the cholesterol is just there to actually help with damage that you're doing inside your body. And so there was another really good analogy. Is imagine aliens were looking at the world, and they saw ambulances arriving at these different places, and then they saw dead people there. They would assume that these ambulances are killing people. So these ambulances are basically going around just murdering loads of people, because everywhere these ambulances go, you see dead people. And that's the same thing. So like you see cholesterol in veins and you think, fuck, cholesterol's killing everyone. But you don't understand that it's actually there to help. And so there's something underlying beneath it. Anyway, so Ansel Keys said about cholesterol, and he said about saturated fats. And so everyone started reducing that. And then over the course of many, many years, cholesterol and heart disease started skyrocketing. And so that was like the first instance of like nutritional dogma, which was actually completely incorrect. And over the years, there's just been loads of things. So there's been about salt as well. And now the most modern thing is about meat. So in a lot of places in the UK, they're actually removing meat in elderly people's homes. They're doing like plant-based Mondays and stuff like that. And you see in like Edinburgh and like Scotland, they're removing meat from children's meals in schools and prisons. And so think about that. They're giving children like basically prison diets. And same thing in elderly homes. When the thing is, children need meat the most because you're developing. And if you've seen like third world countries in Africa, children who don't have access to meat, their brains don't develop properly. And also, elderly people need protein as well, because as you age, you get age-related sarcopenia. Sarcopenia is when your muscles start degrading. And so there's this saying, break a hip, die in pneumonia. And what that means is, if you don't have the muscle in your body to take care of you, if you break a hip, which can happen as you get older, you'll be in hospital and you'll end up just catching something else and dying from it. And so your muscle actually protects you. And if you're in hospital and you can't eat for whatever reason, so let's say you're sick and you can't eat, your muscle is your line of defense. Whilst you're fasting, your body will catabolize your muscle. Your muscle stores B vitamins, your muscle stores glucose, it stores amino acids. It literally is food. Your fat is food, your muscle is food, and it's your final line of defense. When your muscle runs out, you die. So that's when you die. So you should be protecting your muscle as much as possible. In fact, a lot of people nowadays are coining this term called strongevity. Instead of longevity, strongevity. Because your muscle is a longevity organ. The more muscle you have, the more lines of defense you have in case anything goes wrong. And so why they're actually vilifying protein? Honestly, I think it's to make people weak. Call me a conspiracy theorist, but like that is honestly the reason I believe it is. Because I don't see any other reason why they would be saying to remove meat. I don't really understand why. I mean,
no, I completely agree with you, mate. I look at
the
narrative that comes out for most things, not just like, let's take away from nutrition. If you look at how to be healthy, your relationship with the sun, if you look at how to be a healthy state of mind, the financial system, everything tries to keep you in a box. It tries to keep you controlled, and so you're depressed. And like, you don't want to be a conspiracy theorist, but you have just got to look at the mainstream narrative that comes around of how to live life, how to look after your body, and you start looking at it thinking, nah, dude, they don't want me to be healthy. I'm sure of it. Because as you said, there's no other way around it.
They don't want you to be healthy. And so, like, for example, during COVID time, I don't want to get your podcast demonetized, but basically during COVID time, what I noticed, I think during the time, because my business Champ closed during that time, what I was noticing was, I didn't know how dangerous it was at the time. At the time, and no one really knew. It's like, okay, so like, there's this big disease going out everywhere, and like, yeah, fuck, like, what is this? Is everyone literally just dropping dead? And then they started releasing loads of studies saying that it's basically people who are overweight and who are more likely to die from COVID. And so I was waiting patiently for the government to say exercise, nutrition. I was waiting and waiting and waiting, and it never happened. And then that's when I realized, fuck, this whole thing's a scam. Literally, this whole thing's a scam. And after reading books like Weston Price, Nutritional and Physical Degeneration, you start noticing that everything you eat, it builds your body. And then you start noticing when they were talking about COVID and they were saying that natural immunity doesn't work, I was like, but everything I was reading was saying the exact opposite. It was saying natural immunity is the only thing that works. I remember seeing titles saying that anti-vaxxers have this dangerous theory called natural immunity. This dangerous theory called natural immunity. And so like honestly, I just think it's to make people weaker. Like I really do. I don't really see why otherwise. I don't see why otherwise. I mean, I remember when I was in college and we were studying about the NHS because we have Torbay Hospital and it's the biggest employer in the area. And we were learning about their goals, and it said one of their biggest goals was preventative medicine going forwards. That's what they were going to be focusing on. And so that was interesting to learn, but as I grew up, I just learned that preventative medicine just meant quit smoking and take more vaccines. That's what it meant. Preventative medicine didn't mean like dieting, it didn't mean exercise, it didn't mean anything like that. And so it's almost like, how can you take the piss anymore? It's almost like you're watching behind a bush and you're saying like, do they believe it? Yeah, they fucking believe it. Oh my god, they're they're actually doing it. Yeah, they're doing it. Like, oh my god.
I think what people are waking up to it though. I definitely think more people, through the power of social media, are starting to realise that, look, this narrative that we're being led by the mainstream media, by what our parents have told us, by what the government are telling us, they don't have a clue. They're just people like us, and they're just coming across things and trying to formulate their ideas. And most of it goes through the pursuit of wealth. They're like, I want to get wealthier. How can I make people more controllable so they're more monetizable? And I really think all of our problems come because everyone looks through wealth instead of, as a society, as humans, how can we grow and how can we like progress?
I do agree. I think a lot of it's to do with money. A lot of it's to do with lobbying. I do think a lot of it's to do with money. I had a friend recently, and I told him to follow Sean Baker online because he was quite skeptical when I talked about like meat. You know, like because. The thing with meat is like you raise it and people are like, oh, you know, like, you know, it's like it's an uncomfortable situation. I was like, just follow Sean Baker, and now my friend, he's sending me things about like meat and vegans and stuff like that. He's like, mate, I had no idea. I was like, mate, I was telling you, like, it's not like just eat meat, be manly. It's like it's literally like the giving of life. So I had a friend yesterday ask me. He says, I focus on, you know, I eat well. I make sure I get my calories. I make sure I get my protein, you know, my carbs and stuff like that. And I told him that's not even how I think about food. I don't even think about food as calories, carbs, protein, fats. Like what I think about is like, do I get vitamin A? You know, do I get my vitamin B1, vitamin B2, vitamin B3, B5, B6, you know, B8, B9, you know, like B12. Do I get my vitamin C? Do I get my vitamin D, E, K2, K1? You know, do I get these? Do I get my coenzyme Q10? Do I get my amino acids, minerals, stuff like that? Like, I don't think about calories, fats, and proteins. I mean, if I actually want to be losing weight or if I want to be changing my body, I might think about calories, fats, and proteins. And he asked me, so how do you think about food? Like, what do you eat? And I say, well, what I do is I actually focusing on getting the right food. So if you eat red meat, if you eat some form of offal, if you don't know what offal is basically animal organs. And you might say, oh, that sounds disgusting. Well, most of the world eats offal anyway, so stop being a fucking pussy. Basically, like, offal, it's true. Like, I've had loads of people come up to me and say, I don't want to eat liver. It's like, you know, goose liver is a delicacy. Chicken liver is a delicacy. You eat it in loads of French places.
Mate, I tried liver for the first time the other day. I'd never had it before, and I literally tried. I got some lamb liver from Marks and Spencer's. It was horrible, mate, but I just it's horrible. Came through it.
Yeah. You don't eat it because it tastes nice. I mean, there's ways to make it taste better, but you eat it because it makes you strong. And so the way what I eat a lot of times, I eat offal mince. So I buy it from Gaze Girl Organics. It's beautiful. So it has minced beef inside it. It has liver. It has heart inside it. And it's literally like a pre-workout because heart has coenzyme Q10, which activates mitochondria. Mitochondria is the heart of basically all your cells, and it gives you energy. So the reason that you move, the reason that you're animated is because of mitochondria. That's literally why you exist. That's why you're moving. That's how your body produces energy. And a heart has coenzyme Q10. And so when you eat it, you can literally feel your mood go up afterwards. And so I eat offal mince that has heart and liver inside it, and other days I eat things like steak and kidney. And so if I want to get all my nutrients, I focus on eating animal foods, I focus on getting offal as well. And that pretty much covers you for pretty much all your vitamin A, your B vitamins, literally all your amino acids, vitamin K2. You want to be eating some form of fat for vitamin E. But I eat loads of eggs. And that's how I think about food. I think about food in terms of nutrients and minerals, because I tell you what, nutrient deficiency is not. It's not fun. They find a lot of studies that supplementing vitamin D3 is more effective than taking antidepressants. More effective. And that's just because being deficient of vitamin D3. So imagine like all these vitamin. If you're not getting vitamin A, you can't produce sperm. You can't produce sperm. You can lose your eyesight and your DNA stops repairing. You know, vitamin B1 is used to regulate stress in your body. So you have adrenal glands and they use vitamin B1. In fact, vitamin B1 is used for pretty much everything inside your body. Vitamin B12 gives you energy. Vitamin C, your skin. It's just like, yeah. That I think that's one of the foundations. So you ask me, how do you actually be healthy? Get your nutrients. That that is like how to actually be healthy. Now, you said earlier that you had eczema. Do you get eczema at all anymore at all?
So it's when it comes now, I know exactly what causes it. So yesterday I ate some yogurt with some almond butter and some nuts. And for me, it seems to be milk. Milk seems to like bring up any sort of eczema. As soon as I ate it, mate, I looked down, I had like, probably a couple hours later, started getting like eczema on the side of my arm. So I'm very deliberate now that I know when I eat something, I kind of do it to test it. So I know what foods to avoid and what foods to eat. But yeah, like the eczema still arises.
Well, I guess you're lucky in a sense because you have like an immediate feedback loop. You can eat something and see how your body reacts. So I think this is like where people get quite confused with diet is two places. They say, okay, low carb, high fat. You know, like which one do I do? The truth is, you can do either one. If you eat, you can eat low carb and high fat, and you can lose weight, and you can eat low fat, high carb, and you can lose weight, and one might work better for you or another. So, for example, in Biospan, some people work better with low carb, some people work better with high fat. But if you mix carbs and fats together, that's how you actually gain weight by mixing carbs and fats together. So if you have like a high carb, high fat meal, I'll do this. I'll just start packing body fat. So to clear up that question, which a lot of people ask, should I do high carb, low fat? Just do which one you prefer. I think during a mealtime, you should be doing either low carb or high fat. You should be doing either low carb or low fat. You should do one or two. You shouldn't be. I mean, if you eat high carb, high fat, it's not the end of the world. But you'll just pack on weight. If you want to do that, that's fine. But in terms of like what you're talking there,
Maxi, how do you go?
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, go on, carry on.
No, what are you saying?
Yeah, so if I want to like look at what nutrient deficiencies I've got, how do you even go around doing that? And how do I know what foods have got the right nutrients in it? Because it's so difficult. There's so much information out there, many like different nutrients you need to be hitting. It's like I think sometimes it's information overload. You're like, shit, what do I do next?
Do you know what's interesting? Tell me what you eat. I can tell you what you're deficient in. It's that simple. Like the thing is, so like. If you're watching this, I run a company called Biospan. It's a private chef and nutritionist service. You have a private chef in your kitchen cooking your food. You have a nutritionist looking after your health. It's essentially like a super bougie health service for ultra rich people in London. And we have nutritionists. And when you do a nutrient test with us, do you know why you're doing the nutrient test? It's not so we know what's inside your body. It's so you believe us when we tell you. It's not so we. Let me rephrase that. It's not so we know what nutrients you're deficient in. It's so you believe us when we tell you. That's all it is. Like, if you tell me what you're eating, I can tell you what you're deficient in. Like, it's that simple. Like, I can say you're likely deficient in this, you're likely deficient in that. There can be some genetic variations. And there can be also, if your gut is fucked, then you might also have some form of malabsorption somewhere along the way. So you might be nutrient deficient. But in general, pretty much all humans require almost the same things. That's the thing. So is there any like nutrient specifically that you think like you could be deficient in?
I think the one thing that worries me at the moment is like testosterone. I'm really like worried. I think I see from my state of mind and sometimes how my energy like fluctuates. I feel like I've got a lack of testosterone. Whether that's just me listening to too many things, but that's the one that's getting me at the moment is like my hormones, and my testosterone is one thing I'm worrying about a little bit.
It's interesting. That's very interesting. Testosterone is a huge problem. Have you taken ashwagandha?
I took it like years and years ago. This was maybe like 3 years ago when I first started going to the gym, but I've not took it since.
Yeah, I've got friends my age getting on testosterone replacement therapy. This wasn't really an issue. Supposedly, it wasn't an issue that happened long ago. Why? Like, so you think you got low T, or you just like concerned about it?
I think because you listen to all the things online, there's a lot of like information coming out now about the importance of testosterone, and I see some of the negatives of having low testosterone, and sometimes it's like they're things I suffer with, but that could just be I'm suffering with certain mental health problems myself. But I don't know, it's because I see the benefits of testosterone, I see the ability to like pack on muscle with it. I'm like, that's something that needs to be looked into. I feel like I need to be optimizing my test, but I've not done much research in how to do that or what would be good ways to up my testosterone.
Upping your testosterone is actually quite simple. It's really simple actually. And I think the part where people get tripped up is because they're not they don't like being accountable. So like when you actually learn what makes your testosterone work, you know, it really is a simple things, and then there's no secret. It's just like you're not doing those simple things a lot of the time. That's what I usually find. But the simple, wiped off my screen. The simple things for testosterone is first, sleep. Number one thing is sleep. If you're not getting good enough sleep, you're going to tank your own testosterone. Second, lifting heavy weights. So heavy weights improves your testosterone quite a bit. In fact, you'll notice it. If you go to the gym, you start lifting heavy weights, you feel better the next day. So that's the main two things. It's sleep and lifting heavy weights. Now, your diet plays a huge role. So zinc plays a huge role in testosterone. Zinc comes from red meat. The amount of, you can supplement zinc, but I wouldn't recommend it because supplements always have cofactors. So, for example, if you take zinc, you need to take copper as well because they balance each other out. So zinc plays a huge role in testosterone. And so I'd recommend eating more red meat for that. I also think that what you do and your purpose in life plays a huge role in testosterone, because testosterone is quite a funny hormone in that your perception of reality can affect how much testosterone you have in your body. And so I think testosterone is there actually to protect us. So, for example, if you are in the presence of your testosterone is there to make you capitalize on your opportunities, but also it will reduce to make sure you don't do fucking stupid stuff that will get yourself killed. So let's give an example. If you are the strongest person in a group, and then you have females around you, and this is an opportunity to become a leader, you have mating opportunities, and your body feels like you're in a safe environment, and it understands you're competent enough to take charge of this opportunity, you will increase in testosterone. And in the same way that if you're in a situation where you're compromised, your safety, you're around another male, you have a stare off, and you lose, your testosterone will go down because it's telling you don't do something fucking stupid. So testosterone is a really interesting hormone in that sense that your perception of reality will actually dictate how much testosterone you have in your body. And so one of the biggest things you can do for testosterone is actually do something that's alongside your purpose. So if you're living a life where you're not living your purpose, you're not doing what you like, you're in a workplace, a boss you don't like, you feel like a bitch, like you're not gonna feel great about yourself. Your testosterone is not going to be good. I think one of the biggest advantages I've had is that for the past few years, I've just been building companies non-stop. So I've been living on basically my own peril. So I've been able to be my own boss in that sense. So I haven't had to answer to really anyone in that sense. And I think it does give a level of confidence, and it does give you a level of freedom. And I think that plays a huge role. Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's the kind of feeling I get when I go to work. So I'm working at Marks and Spencer at the moment, just coming back from travelling. And I walk down there and all morning I've been on my grind. I've gone to the gym, I do my work, and I feel good about myself. And it's honestly, mate, as soon as I step foot in that supermarket, it's like I can feel my testosterone drop. I'm like, no, here we go. And it's like coming home, living at home. I feel like less as a person. And I think what you said there, that perception shapes your testosterone or can enhance it. I think that's so true because our perceptions shape our reality. How you think you fit into the world is how the world will react to you. So I think being on your own purpose and having your own grind is a good thing for people to know that will make you feel more confident in yourself.
Yeah, I honestly do think your perception of yourself plays a huge role in your testosterone. That's one of the biggest things, and the reality is I think you can change. You can meditate. You can do your self affirmations, but the best thing you can do is actually be a person that's worthwhile living. Basically, there's only so much you can do to plaster up your life. And in reality, if you change your life for the better, that's going to improve your testosterone massively. In fact, this is an interesting point to go on. I think most people have mental health completely misunderstood. Completely misunderstood. They think that anxiety and depression is a disease that we're supposed to medicate. I couldn't disagree more. And the reason for this is the reason that we get depression. It's not a bug, it's a feature. So imagine we're living in caves and you have your person next to you and then they get fucking killed, they get eaten by a lion, whatever. And then you feel depression because, you've lost your body. the reason that depression is there is to make sure that you're not next. Because imagine like your friend gets eaten and you don't feel a thing. You know, you don't feel a thing. You're absolutely fine. It means you're next. You know, we can't protect each other. And so the people who felt empathy and felt depression when times got difficult, they were more likely to reproduce and pass on their genes. That's natural selection, because it meant that they took action against these times and they were able to improve their lives. And so as a result of evolution, enough people who felt these emotions, they reproduced over time. Depression, anxiety isn't a bug, it's a feature. And so when someone dies around you, what your body does, it goes like this. Don't fucking let that happen again, because you're next. And so that's the reason it's there. And now, so it's your compass. When your life's rubbish, when you feel, you know, when your life's rubbish, when something's going wrong, you have a compass inside your body. And this compass tells you where to go. It doesn't necessarily tell you which direction, but you know, like when you're in a game in Call of Duty or something, and you go in the out zone and you just basically just start dying. Like, it's essentially like that. It's like your body's not telling you the exact direction, but it tells you basically when something's wrong, and you can feel it inside you. And that manifests itself as anxiety, it manifests itself as depression. Now, if you're trying to medicate this, you are suppressing your compass. You have this compass inside your body that tells you what to do and how to improve your life. And so, I think that's the same thing with like testosterone. So people say, I have low testosterone, you know, and the reason that you might say that is it manifests as anxiety and manifests as depression. And that's essentially your body's compass telling you that something's wrong and to improve something about your life. And I believe if you move close, as humans, we have only a few purposes, really. You know, we're supposed to reproduce, we're supposed to have children, we're supposed to survive, and that's it, really. Like that's it, really. We're supposed to reproduce and survive, and we're supposed to make sure that our children are protected so they can reproduce and survive. And so, in order to complete these tasks, the body has, as a result, made some other.
As you stopped was when you was talking about having the compass, and this is really interesting, right? Because have you read into Carl Jung?
No, I haven't. I've heard around. I like. But I understand Carl Jung. Yeah. I understand Carl Jung, but I haven't read around him.
Yeah. So he's got a concept called the hero's journey, right? And what it is, and it relies on like neurosis and anxiety, and it's when you're getting neurosis anxiety, it's that you're not living aligned with where you should be going. There's something in your body or something in your mind, in your psyche, that's saying what's happening in your external reality, what you're acting out, is not engaged with what you're actually doing, and something needs to go. And there's a guy called Joseph Campbell as well, and they both kind of conceptualize this thing of the hero's journey, which is like you need to push past your fears, push past your like discomforts, and go out and explore things and do things in the world. And I think that them systems that have been evolved in our body and our mind have been used for that reason. They're like, you need to go out and take action. They're indicators.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. So like anxiety, depression, it's a compass. It's not a disease. It's not a bug. It's a feature. Like it's not like God. It's not like God is standing there, like he's looking at his targets on Earth, and he's thinking, "You," and just fucking throws, you know, pancake of depression. I've been hit. Fuck, I've got it. He's like, I've got it. I've got depression. I've got disease. Like, what am I going to do? No, like it's in. This is a built-in feature. Like this is a feature of your body. Like you do not medicate to. In all fairness, like. Even though I said do not medicate to suppress it, I have seen people take antidepressants and I've seen it change their lives. So like, you know, as much as like I can say what I'm saying, I have actually seen people have drastic improvements from antidepressants. So like I feel like it, you know, I've seen it being quite an effective bridge for people to get to where they need to go. So, because like I understand the modern world can just destroy. You know, there's so much technology, there's all these things, and it can literally just destroy you. And so for some people, their place is so hard that they need a bridge to be able to get somewhere where they feel normal, so they can take it there themselves. But the understanding, like I don't think you should be led to believe that you have this incurable disease. You have this very normal thing going inside you because your life is awful. And you need to fix it, and it's a compass basically telling you what to do. That's honestly that's my belief. That's what I think is going on basically when you feel awful. I think PTSD. You know, PTSD is real. You know, I understand that. Like that's where your body has learned to essentially defend you when you don't want it to defend you, and so like you just like have like you have like this hyper alertness, heart racing. You switch on your parasympathetic nerve. You switch on your sympathetic nervous system. But yeah, I think depression, anxiety is completely misunderstood. Completely.
Yeah, Jordan Peterson said something amazing not long ago, which was so we've got this conception to the dominance hierarchy. So we've got a relationship to the dominance hierarchy, right? And that's what regulates our emotions and our feelings and our state of mind. And what happens when people need antidepressants is the conceptualization to their relationship with the dominance hierarchy gets out of line. So they could actually be doing really well in life, but their systems in their body are faulty, and it doesn't see them in where they are aligned in the perceived dominance hierarchy. So like for a few of society, like the antidepressants are actually helpful because it helps reset their system and bring back their serotonin levels back with the dominance hierarchy. But most of the time, if you're feeling that anxiety, depression, like I do sometimes when I've got to go to work and all this, it's a sign that you're mismatching a dominance hierarchy, and you need to start making improvements in your life to start becoming the valuable man, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think what ruins that dominance hierarchy though is it probably is social media. I mean, like, when can you before see like people living these like incredibly lavish lives that you're not living? Yeah, like they're living it and you're not. Like, it's just basically it's fuck the body. Like, it's basically fuck the body. It's the modern world in that sense. It's basically completely fuck the body. But there's this huge problem. There is something that you can do. What I personally do, which has honestly been a life changer for me. I take a supplement. Well, take it now myself. So I take ashwagandha, I take L-theanine and rhodiola rosea, and this stack is fucking powerful. This stack is it's so powerful. It literally changed my life in so many different ways. When you take it, your voice goes deeper. Like, your voice literally gets deeper when you take the stack. And I gave it to my brother as well, and he's like, usually like I gave it for Christmas, and usually when I get anyone involved in any nutrition things, like, oh, why, like families like, oh, why are you getting me involved in your thing? Like, I don't want to be a part of. And then anyway, he started taking it, and then 21 days later, he said, mate, what the fuck is this? Like, what have you given me? Because he's like, this is so powerful. I'm like, I know, it works so well. And what I noticed is when I stopped taking, how I felt is I just had more energy. The days were easier. Basically, life just became easier. I was happier. Days became easier. L-theanine is really good if you drink coffee as well, because it calms down the GABA receptors so you don't get jittery. And so, and it improves your testosterone massively. Improves your libido quite a bit. And what I noticed when I came off it, because I came off it for a little while, and like my balls started to atrophy. So what I didn't notice is like my balls just got larger when I was on it. Literally, they got larger. And like when I came off it, like I had this like ache in my balls, and I was a bit worried. I was like, this isn't normal. Like, if your balls ache, and then I spoke to my friend. My friend is like, oh no, that's normal. That's when your balls atrophy. And I'm like, how do you know this? how do you know this? And he's done a lot of research basically on what happens. Like when you take TRT, when you get on like testosterone, your top nuts become tiny because like you stop producing your own like sperm, and basically that like aching feeling is like supposedly like atrophy. And so I was like, okay, this is interesting. And so anyway, as soon as I started taking it again, it stopped. this aching, and they got smaller. And when I started taking again, like it basically stopped. And so everything went back to normal. But that's a secret I do. So. These are my secrets. I take the supplement stack. I sometimes I don't take rhodiola rosea. I might mix it around a bit, but that's what I do. And I eat red meat. Like, honestly, people sleep on red meat. People really sleep on red meat, and I think that's because red meat, you got to make it right. Sometimes it's too gamey. If you buy red meat from Gazegill Organics, I'll tell you what, they got some of the fucking tastiest beef you'll ever try. It's so good. It's so good. Like, you don't even need to do anything with it. It's like you can literally just put salt on it and just whack it in the oven, and it's so tasty. It's honestly, it's so good. But yeah, those are the main things. But the thing is, when people hear me say these things, what they'll do is they'll try the supplements, they won't improve their sleep, and they won't eat red meat, and they say it doesn't work. And it's just like, you sleep on it essentially. Like these are like the main things you can do. There's also a big problem with plastics. A really big problem with plastics. Do you know about the problem with plastics?
So I've started reading into it a little bit now, and I've started becoming a lot more conscious of even just. I read something the other day about the receipts at supermarkets. So apparently the receipts at supermarkets, the way they're printed out, tanks your testosterone. And I'm on the tills looking at them like, mate, I might start wearing gloves because I don't want to touch them.
Mate, it's supposedly a BPA inside it, but mate, it's not good. It's not fucking good. It's not good. I don't want to be like a doomsday message person, but like I'll just explain to you the science quickly behind it. There's this lady. Her name is Dr. Shana Swan, and she's been doing this research around. Mate, you've just gone dark. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can still hear you. Keep going, Maxi. I can still hear you. For a minute.
So basically, there's this lady, Dr. Shana Swan, and she's done some research, and it's not good. It's not good. Basically, she was trying to. Children were starting to be deformed when they were being born. So one thing that differentiates men between women is the distance between your balls and your arsehole. So for your men, like we call it in England, we call it a gooch, like it's quite large. But for women, it's very small. And what they started noticing with these boys being born is their gooches were getting smaller. And so, which means that they were by definition being born more female. And they were wondering why this was happening. And they were also noticing that, so these boys were growing up, they weren't able to produce sperm in the same way. And she was researching this. And so she started taking urine samples from these women. And what she noticed is they had very high levels of something called phthalates inside their urine. Phthalates is something that comes from plastics. And then she started researching males with phthalates in the urine. And what she found was males with phthalates in the urine had lower levels of testosterone. And a lot of them were infertile as well. And so, anyway, in epidemiology, so epidemiology, correlation does not mean causation. So you can't say this does this, or it must be this. But so it starts to build a bigger picture. So what you use epidemiology for is so you can start building a theory, not a conclusion. So that's the problem with the whole thing about red meat, is they use epidemiology, which is correlation studies, and they draw a conclusion. It's like, look, people who eat meat die. Well, everyone dies, but see, look, and so so they try to pull a conclusion from that. That's incompetent. You pull a theory, not a conclusion, and then you test the theory using studies and everything like that. And so when you actually do the studies, it doesn't match up. But anyway, so they started doing this epidemiology and started noticing, and they started testing people's urines and started noticing that people with phthalates were basically infertile. The women with phthalates in urine, their children being born deformed. And they started going to plastic factories where they have very high levels of phthalates. And the men who work in the sections with phthalates have tanked their testosterone. Tanked it. Compared to the people who aren't working in a phthalate section. And basically it's not just the phthalates, it's the BPAs, BPZs, whatevers. And the problem with the industry, when you'll notice a lot of really scummy marketing. So they'll say BPA free, but it's actually got BPC instead. So I don't drink. You might see this in my videos. I basically carry around this glass. I need to remove the sticker. I basically carry on a glass bottle of water with me everywhere because I use this Osmio reverse osmosis water filter. Because you don't want to be drinking tap water anyway, because that's literally got birth control inside it, and it's just got loads of fluoride inside it. So you want to be drinking the best water possible, and reverse osmosis is really good. And so I use a glass water bottle because you don't want to otherwise just drink plastic water. And so I try to stay away from things from plastic. In fact, in Biospan, we serve food in glass containers. We don't serve food in plastic, and we do this very specifically. So glass can be a bit more inconvenient. You break it, it smashes. We had Ali, who were serving food for in AnEsonGib. He broke one of his meals just before a fight because it was in a glass container, and so he had to find something else. But so you don't want what I'm saying about glass. It's not just something I'm saying. I believe it to such a degree that even in Biospan, the company I run, we literally serve food in glass, so it's not served in plastics. And when we're buying broths and things like that, we source broths from suppliers that use glass packaging, not plastics. If you want to get, I think it's fine if you get food inside plastic, if it's like dry store food inside plastic, I think that's fine. It's not going to rub off. But if you're like having food that's liquid inside plastic, there's a very high chance you're basically getting all these like chemicals inside your food, and I don't want to be consuming these chemicals. I think you just got to be a bit more vigilant. Like, you see testosterone tanking past in the last 30 years. You see people eating more seed oils. You see the plastics. You see us sitting aside with loads of technology. I think it's just being vigilant. I think it's just being vigilant. I think some people are naturally stronger than other people, so we can survive with higher levels of chemicals, and so it's natural selection. It's natural selection. So if you can survive the chemicals and reproduce, fine. That's natural selection. You're meant to have children. Great, you have great genetics. But if you can't, then that's also natural selection. You won't be able to reproduce, and then the pool will go on. However, the work around that is if you're vigilant about these things and understand like what basically can be damaging you, what can't be damaging you, then that's also natural selection. You were smart enough to avoid these things, and so you're able to pass on your genes. That's the way I think about it. Plastics are fucked. Plastics are fucked. It's it's not good.
Yeah, you've got to be really smart these days. Like, I feel like we're getting attacked. Yeah, Max, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Right, sweet. Yes, it's just a little bit delayed, but yeah, I feel like we're getting attacked at all angles. So from every angle, mate, you've got to watch out for the plastics. You've got to even watch out for the water you drink, the food you eat, whatever's happening in your environment, all the chemicals and the toxins are going on. You've literally got to be so vigilant and so on it, and it's rather you be ignorantly bliss and choose to ignore it and then have loads of health problems later on in your life, or you actually start reading about this stuff and you start taking action on it now. Like, you have to start taking action on it because it's your life on the line. It's not as simple as just ignore and see what happens. Like, you have to read about this stuff, because if not, you're just going to be ignorant to it all, and health problems are going to come your way.
That's the thing. But I don't think the thing is, I don't think like you should be a doomsday messenger. Like, at the end of the day, like, you should be able to like live in society in like a normal way. And so I feel like a lot of people, they're so extreme, like they're so extreme. And I think like at the end of the day, as long as like, I think you should be vigilant about it. I think you should build your home environment and your main environment around a way that's healthy. But like, if you like, let's say you go into like a podcast studio, you're invited to somewhere and they give you like a plastic bottle of water and you're like, I can't drink that, it's got plastic. Like, I don't think you should be an idiot. Like, idiot's not the right word. I don't think you should live a life where you're excluded from these things. I think like, because at the end of the day, those who are most adaptable survive the best. But I do believe that you should build your core environment in a way that's really like quite smart. That's what I think. That's what I think. Just build.
I also think as well, there's a certain amount of stress that. Yeah, there's a certain amount of stress that comes when you overthink these things as well. So if you've got like a belief or a thought about that sort of food being really unhealthy, it's like actually proven by the placebo effect that food is going to be unhealthy for you. If you think something's healthy for you, it's actually going to be healthy for you. So what you said there is like really reinforces what I'm trying not to do, which is like getting obsessive about things. Because if I'm so obsessed that I'm going to touch some plastic and then I have no choice but to drink a bottle of water with plastic in it, then that's actually going to have physiological effects in my body that are worse than if I just let go of the idea a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's what I think it is. I feel like the best median is understanding these things. So understand plastics, understand like there's a load of things that will like just like it's like it'll break your mind. So there's like plastics, there's like junk light exposure, the food you eat, the fact that loads of foods have chemicals making you infertile. Like there's all these sorts of things, and I believe the best thing is like not to live a life like where you're trapped in a prison, but to understand these things, build an environment around you which is most optimal, and to make smart choices when you're out, but don't be afraid if you can't do it. I think like you have to be as flexible and adaptable as possible, and I feel like that's how you live the most advantageous life. It's just being aware, building that environment. In fact, that's actually why I built. That's why I built Biospan. Most people like what a lot of people don't understand about why I built Biospan is the idea behind it is you should be able to eat the highest quality version of your diet anywhere in the world. And that's why I built Biospan. It's because if you want to live a life to basically the fullest degree, you want to be traveling, you want to be going all these different places, that's fine. But, and you should be able to do that. But wouldn't it be great if you could do that and you can have your diet as well everywhere? So I guess what I'm trying to achieve with Biospan is, I said like you want to make your environment as good as possible. I'm basically trying to expand your environment so this environment can be in more places. That's essentially what I'm trying to do with Biospan. So you can have a private chef in your home cooking your food. If you go to another location, let's say you jump over to Dubai, you jump over to New York, you can have a private chef there cooking your food. And so I'm trying to make it so your environment is larger. And I think that's what we need to do. I think, you should be adaptable, you should be flexible, but we should work probably as a society to increase this environmental, safe zone, essentially an environmental safe zone where you can access your diet in different places around the world, where you can, where fewer things are in plastic and more things are in glass. I think that's it. I think everything's going. I'm trying not to be a doomsday messenger. I say like food quality is getting really bad. Food quality is getting really bad. Because think about it this way: 100 years ago, everything was organic. Food didn't have pesticides, didn't have fungicides, insecticides. All animals were raised outdoors in pastures. Animals used to procreate naturally, not being inseminated with little squirty things. And then fish didn't have pollution inside them. Fish were clean. We live in a very different world nowadays. In fact, after reading the works of Weston Price, it's actually started to terrify me a little bit. Not to the point I couldn't sleep at night, but I was like, fuck, this isn't good. This really isn't good. And someone we need to basically fix this. There should be you should keep this window open where you can always access these foods. So, the whole thing with, right now they're doing meatless Mondays in children's menus at schools. They're doing in Edinburgh, they remove, in Scotland, they remove meat from children's menus. In the UK, they're mandating plant-based Mondays for elderly people and stuff like that. After seeing what they did with COVID, I wouldn't think it's a stretch to say that they're moving towards some form of meat tax, where if you eat meat, you've got to pay more tax, and then actually you've used all your meat credits this week, so you can't eat meat. I wouldn't say it's a stretch that it's actually I wouldn't say it can't go that direction. I wouldn't say that. And so with Biospan, I'm trying to make this outlet where you can literally always access these foods. So we're keeping that window open where, if you use the service, you can get those organic fresh fruits and vegetables, those, you can get the red meat, you can get all these foods without the government saying, watching you saying, nope, you're using all your credits up. Hopefully that future never comes around. But that's essentially, it is one of the things I thought about. Because this happened in history. I'm from Latvia. And Latvia was occupied by the Soviet Union. So my mum's got loads of stories about when she grew up, because she had Soviet soldiers in her country. And Latvia is a country that represents freedom. And I wouldn't say it necessarily has much freedom, to be honest. I do love the country. I wouldn't say it has much freedom, but the idea of the flag represents freedom. And they have this huge monument in the middle of the country. That's the Monument of Freedom. It's a protected statue. In fact, if you look at it, it's beautiful. It's huge, and it's got the Statue of Liberty on top of it. She's holding 3 stars. And yeah, I just believe, my mum's told me all the stories. She's told me about her mum being she watched her mum get dragged to the KGB for writing poetry. And history repeats itself, history rhymes, and seeing basically what's happened recently and what they're actually doing, they're acquiring farms like Netherlands, Ireland, things like that, and then they're removing meat from menus, they're introducing CDC currency. It does concern me. It does concern me, and so it does concern me. So I guess one of the other things I'm trying to do with Biospan is just basically almost like an underground place where you can still access your rations of meat. Instead of
Maxi, what you said with your mum being part of part of Latvia and like the Soviet Union. That do you obviously she that grew up in a rough place, and like it's not a rough place, but it's strong people because they had to deal with the Soviet Union, what was going on there. You have to be strong people. Do you think that affects like you? Do you think you took some like channeled some of that energy, and that's what's made you such a like an entrepreneur and so like strong in the things you do? Do you think it kind of like your parents' history and what they go through channels into you?
It inspires me. I wouldn't say, but it's not parents, it's parent. It's my mum. I'd say it inspires me. Well, this is something that's quite interesting. When I was young, I grew up in Torquay, and I was from Latvia. I didn't know anyone else Latvian. No one was Latvian. No one even heard of Latvia. No one knew where Latvia was. It was just this funny sounding place, and I had this strong accent even though I lived in the UK, and so like I almost had a stigma like that, like I'm from this random place no one's heard of, and like I had this funny accent. And something that actually changed my perception is I watched Vikings. Have you seen Vikings?
Nah.
No. Vikings, it's a series that's fucking badass. You basically see these Nordic people, and they conquered the world. Like these illiterate people, like they couldn't read, they couldn't write. They conquered the UK. They discovered America 500 years before Columbus. They found Ireland, Greenland. They were undefeated in battle, and they were like and I was watching these people, and I thought, fuck, these people are badass. Like, and I noticed. They're me. Like this. So this country, which I never knew anything about I never knew anything about this country my entire life. All I knew was from this random country. No one knew anything about. I didn't really know anything about. The only thing I knew about it was that about Latvia was that it was conquered by Russians and Germans, and it was just basically it was terrorized by all sorts of different people all the time. So like to me, it didn't sound cool. It didn't sound cool that I was from this place that like it's got all these people coming in, coming out, and no one's heard of it, and like. Then I watched Vikings, and I just realized how fucking badass these people are, like from all the Northern Europe. And I was just like, it kind of inspired me. Like I liked it a lot. And I went back to my home country for the first time. I went back when I was 16 for the first time, and that was interesting, just seeing it like when I was young, because it was just interesting being in this place. I was like, so this is where I'm from. But it wasn't until a few years later, I was building Biospan. And my grandma died, and I noticed that I spent so many years building a business, and I wasn't seeing any of my family. I was almost like a lone wolf. I wasn't seeing any of my family. I was being reclusive, and during this time, like I was spending time away from everyone, and bang, and now my grandma's gone. And so like I didn't really have very much family. I had my close immediate family was my brother. My sister and my mum, and like I'm like half adopted from like another family. And during the time, like my like I didn't really fall out of them, but like there was like some stigma because like a big situation going on. But I love them. I love them. But during the time, like I was like on my own path. It was like I don't need anyone. I don't need anything. And then suddenly my grandma died, and it just made me realize like fuck. And I just thought, and that made me think I haven't really got anyone. I was speaking to Carolina, Carolina, our coach from university. I was on the phone
I remember Carolina.
I was on the phone with her, and I just said to her, like I haven't got anyone. Like I'm just working all the time. I haven't got anyone. And she said to me, but you have a dad, and I was like, no, I don't. No, I basically grew up with it. And she said, no, but you do actually have a dad. And for the first time in my life, I didn't even consider it. I've never even thought about it my entire life. And I thought, I do. I do have a dad. And so I just had this idea that I'd go to Latvia then. Like I was in the middle of building Biospan, and I thought, okay, I'm gonna head over to Latvia. And so I went to Latvia. And at first when I arrived there, I met my auntie, and I was in a car with my mum and my auntie. And the first thing my auntie said, so I was unvaccinated, I was like, I ain't fucking taking this shit. And my auntie said, oh, by the way, if you need to be vaccinated to pretty much do anything, like you need to be vaccinated to do anything. You can't go in a restaurant. It's like a 2-class system. I was like, so first thing I thought was, fuck this country, fuck this country, and so yeah, I thought, fuck this country. So I was staying inside. I refused to get this vaccine, and I just thought, like, am I doing myself any harm? And I ended up thinking, like, if I die from this vaccine, the whole world's fucked. So, okay, all right. So I thought I'd give it a go. And I remember getting this vaccine. I remember going to there's this Alpha like mall, and I was going there. I remember this woman. She's fucking this government forced injection, putting it by my arm, and I was just thinking, fucking squirt it on the floor. Fucking squirt. I don't need this shit. Like, and then there we go. Had my injection for my freedom. So that was my first impressions of the country. And so I've been in this place. Okay, I got to understand some of my country. Okay, see what it's like. But what was very strange is I started seeing people around me, and they spoke my mother tongue. That was very strange, because I told you at the beginning, when I could speak 4 languages when I was young, but then only English. But I still always understood Latvian, to a degree. And so it's very strange, because these people, they looked like me. They looked like me, and they sounded like my mum. And so this was strange. So I felt kind of at home in a strange way. And I started seeing family that I've never really knew. I knew them, but I only really met them once in my life, and they basically accepted me, took me in, and I started learning about my home country. And my narrative, I think the stories you tell yourself about your life and where you're from play how you perceive your life, and your confidence and your ability. And I heard a very different story about my home country, because all my life I thought basically I'm from this place, it's terrorized by all these different locations, no one's heard of it. But what I ended up finding out was this tiny nation, this tiny group of people, less than like 1 million people, and they had this idea in 1918. Like they've fought through wars. They've lost people in all sorts of battles. Everything. They've lost people everywhere, and they had this idea. They saw tribes around them. They saw different people, different groups, and they said, "We can be a nation. We can do something." And so they had this idea for a while. And then in 1918, they created the Republic of Latvia. And so that's how Latvia was born. So it was this idea that it could be a nation. And mate, this didn't go down well. So there was Russians, Germans, stuff like that, basically trying to come in, say no, this is our land, stuff like that. And Latvia, had to basically go through wars, fighting, and they erected this monument. It's called the Monument of Freedom, in celebration of freedom. And it's this huge statue in the center of Riga. So Riga has like the old town, it has the new town, and there's this huge monument there. Erected in celebration for freedom, and this is the Statue of Liberty. You can see her, and she's holding up a star, 3 stars above her head, and on the statue you can see people leaning against the statue. So the people leaning against the statue are from all different ages. So it's the people from 500 years ago, the modern people, and it represents all the people who basically fought for freedom, and holding up the statue. And during the Soviet times, the Soviets, they didn't like the statue. And they did not like it because it basically represented freedom, but they weren't able to tear it down because it was a UN protected monument. And my mum told me that when she was young, she would see Soviet soldiers with guns basically standing around the statue, and you weren't allowed to look at the statue. Because during the time in Latvia, a lot of people were sent to, in fact, this happened across a lot of Eastern Europe. People were sent to Siberia to die. So for example, Stalin, they say he killed 55 million of his own people. They weren't his own people. They weren't his own people. These were territories which they acquired around them with the Soviet Union. And they had quotas for amount of people, because they were basically trying to inbreed Russians into these territories, so that you can make it half mix, and so you eventually take over, and then you naturalize these areas. And so you had quotas to get rid of people, so that you can move Russians in, you can take their places, and then you essentially make these Russian areas. And so what they would do is they would take people off from these areas and ship them off to Siberia. Siberia, if you know anything, Siberia is basically in the middle of fucking nowhere, freezing cold. And what happens? Yeah, you die. It's basically a death sentence. And so this is a Holocaust, which is never really talked about. But it was during the 1940s. It's during the same time as World War II. And in Latvia, 170,000 people were sent off, it was something like 15% of the population. So it was 1 in 7 people were basically shipped off to die. And that was in Latvia. In places like Ukraine, they had what's called what's the bottom area of Ukraine, which they're always fighting? The Crimea. In Crimea, everyone was sent off. Literally everyone was sent off. And so, my mum told me about this when I was younger, and I didn't really believe it. I never, I just thought, surely not, surely not. But when I was in Latvia, people, I was stood next to this building and I saw this sign. And the sign, it said in remembrance of people. And I asked them, I was with some friends, and I said, what does this mean? And they said, they were sent to Siberia. I was like, what, that actually happened? And he's like, yes. And so everyone's family knew somebody who was basically sent off to Siberia to die. And so that was the time they lived in. So it was rough. It was really rough. And so I prefer the story to hear about that instead of, instead of this country that was terrorized. There was this group of people that had this idea that we'll form this nation and we'll win. And they have. So now we live in 2023, and Latvia's Latvia's on a world stage. It's one of the emerging economies from the European Union. If you ever go there, it's a very modern economy as well. You'd go there and it kind of feels a bit like England in a lot of ways. And so that's exciting. And I remember when I was with my mum there as well. There's this place where she used to work at. She was a journalist, and there's this huge building in the center of Old Riga. And we were walking past this area, and she told me, she pointed, and she's like, I was sat up there. I was like, what? What do you mean you were sat up there? I was sat up there when the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991. I watched tanks roll out of my country, and I knew for the first time in my life.
So cool!
That
Oh my god!
I know, and she knew for the first time in life she would be free. And so she told me about watching a mum being dragged to the KGB for writing poetry. And also another time I was in this place called Salkrist. So something about Latvia, it's very flat. It's a very, very flat land. So in fact, all of the Baltic states are very flat. And so when you go out to the sea, you can walk out for a mile and still be in water. And so, and during the summer, it stays light for a very long time. So it can be 1 a.m. and it's still light. And so I was there. I was in Salkrest, and they have beach parties in the back. You can hear boom, 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 boom in the background. It's very ambient. And so I was walking out in the middle of the sea, and then it's almost like you're in this infinity pool leading out into the abyss. And you can, in your peripheral vision, all you can see is infinity pool. And in front of you, you have this exotic violet rays of this sun that's setting right before you. That's exotic violet rays bouncing off the sea in these mad colours. And I could just hear the sea very quiet, boom, boom in the background. And then my mum came behind me and she said to me, I used to look out there when I was young, and I knew Sweden was out there, and I knew they were free. I knew they were free. So, yeah, and she said, well, I'm not sure if it was that direction or that direction, but I knew they were out there somewhere. But yeah, so yeah, it's a very interesting nation. So basically, it did inspire me. I guess once I left Latvia, I went to Portugal. So I was riding the skylines. I was a web designer at the time. And I always wanted to travel, and it felt amazing. I was working online. I went to Portugal. I was seeing family, and I was able to I said I broke apart of I fell out my family. I was basically able to reconnect with my family, which I was pretty much half adopted into when I was young, and it was the most incredible experience. I basically ended up staying in this farm, chickens, geese, all sorts of animals. My sister cried when she saw me one night. She was never leave us again. And so it was an incredible feeling. And I guess when I got back to England afterwards, which was when Biospan failed during this time. Biospan failed. I lost all my team members. I lost everything. And so I had to restart as soon as I got back to England. And I think, so you asked me the question, how did it shape my perception of life, being from another country? And I never really thought about it. I never really considered it the way I do now when I was younger. But now, I fucking love it. I'm from this place. It represents freedom. I see this beautiful country. I understand the rich history and everything, and it's yeah. For all intents and purposes, I consider myself British. I do. I grew up here. This is my home country, but my birthplace is Latvia, and I love that country too. And so yeah, that's basically how it shaped my perception.
Oh, that's Maxi. That was a fucking sick story, lad. It's really cool to hear just different perspectives from people that have lived lives that we wouldn't even conceive are possible. It's like when the first time I read Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, and I heard all these, these stories of, oh my god, it's an amazing book. Like this is a must read for everyone. And when I started reading that, I was like, oh my god, this is what human suffering is. Human suffering is this, and I had no idea this happens. And when you really like dive into like other people's struggles like that, it just shows you that these problems we have, like for you running a business, for me going to Marks and Spencer's, they're on the grand scheme of things, they're not that bad. Like, everything's going to work its way out.
They're not.
And I think you just need to realise that people. Yeah, go on, Maxi.
I was just gonna say I'm so happy that you've like mentioned Man's Search for Meaning, because that's one of my favourite books. And in fact, I was reading that book when I was out in Latvia. So when I was out in Latvia, because it was a groundbreaking moment, like when my grandma passed away. Because I was like, and then I spent years basically building businesses, and I was just like, I was almost a bit disillusioned from life, because I was like, what is life even really about? You know, like I finished university, like am I just going to basically stay in a room just working all the time? And then I was reading a lot of different books. I was reading like Power vs. Force. I was reading I was reading the Bible, I was reading the Quran, I was reading like all sorts of like philosophy books. I was reading about Stoicism, I was reading about spirituality, and I was basically just trying to find what the meaning of life was. And I believe Man's Search for Meaning actually taught me the purpose of life. And so like I'm very glad you brought it up, because like it's like if you haven't read Man's Search for Meaning, it's the most beautiful book. It's basically this guy, this accountant, who was sent to Auschwitz. And he became a product of the World War II Holocaust. Anyway, whilst he was in Auschwitz, he basically saw people drop dead around him, and it became so easy. It became so easy to witness after a while for them. Life, like he talks about how life just goes on. Like, you know, you talk about like whether you should have your ration of bread at the start of the day, or if you should like space it out between a day, how you joke about things. You know, your friend may drop dead next to you, and the thing you can think in your head is like, now I've got a pair of shoes because he had a pair of shoes I can take. You know, and so you watch this, and what was very interesting about what he said, which stuck with me forever, is he had at the end of it, they took everything away from this man. They took his freedom, they took his dignity. They took his family. Everyone was killed. You know, they took everything. They took his food. They took his body. But the one thing they couldn't take away from him was his choice of how he felt about life. And that's when he discovered the meaning of life was like, pain. So like it's how you can endure like pain in life is essentially the meaning of life. And so when I read that book, I was in Latvia at a time, and it's freezing cold outside. It's fucking cold. It's freezing. And so what I did next day is I went out just in a t-shirt. Like it was like 6 a.m. in the morning. My fingers were freezing and they were going numb. Like literally, I felt like my hands were going to fall off, and I just endured it. I was just there enduring this. And then I have like, if you can see this, like I journal. In fact, in front of me, I have like I have my laptop propped up on like 10 of these. I'm a big advocate of journaling. It's not like diary writing. It's like just like getting your thoughts out. And you can see in one of the first journals I wrote right in front of it, the meaning of life is pain. The more pain you can pursue, the more meaningful your life will become. And I understood this because, like, you know, when you do like cold baths, for example, do you know why you feel so good? It's because of the pain. Because dopamine and pleasure are in the same balance. So like pain and pleasure creates dopamine. So the reason dopamine is this hormone inside the body which basically makes you do things. It's like the motivation hormone. It makes you take action. So for example, if you're getting punched in the face, you will skyrocket your dopamine because your body's telling you, move the fuck out of the way. Like that's essentially what it does. Dopamine makes you do things. And so when you like take a cold, you know, you see people take on like freezing cold baths. The reason why it's so effective is because what's happening when you're inside cold water is it's freezing fucking cold, and your body's telling you, get the fuck out. And so that they have studies showing that your dopamine can increase by like, if I'm paraphrasing it wrong, it's like 300%, something like that, something ridiculous, whilst having a cold ice bath. And the reason for that is because every moment you're in there, your body's telling you, get the fuck out, get the fuck out, get the fuck out. Like, you're not supposed to be in here. And that's why it skyrockets. And when you get out, you have this big, huge burst of dopamine and you feel amazing. And so, like, you see that if you pursue pain, you get pleasure. That's the thing. So it's literally the exact opposite of pain is pleasure. It's the exact opposite. And so when you pursue too much pleasure at the same time, like drugs, for example, your dopamine tanks, and what do you experience? You experience pain. And so if you live a life where you're constantly pursuing pleasures, you'll experience pain. If you pursue a life where you're constantly pursuing pain, you'll experience pleasure. And I learned this after I was reading Man's Search for Meaning. I was understanding about dopamine, how the dopamine system works, and I was actually going outside, and I understood how amazing I felt when I was having cold baths. And when you have those hard workouts and when you do things which are difficult, it's basically, everyone can come to their own conclusions about life, but like for me, that's what I understood. If I pursue a life which is as painful as humanly possible and is difficult, I'm likely to feel fulfilled, and I'm likely to feel pleasure that I want to seek from it.
Absolutely, Maxi. That's one big lesson I learned from Man's Search for Meaning was this one quote he said, and it was, between stimulus and response, there's an ability to choose. And that comes down to the basic Buddhist principle that life is suffering. The reality is suffering. That's what it is. And what you said, if you pursue that suffering and you embrace it, and whether that suffering is your discomforts, whether that suffering's your anxieties, a hard workout, a cold shower, whatever it may be, if you pursue that then your baseline for pleasure drops and it follows it. So you're actually, it's what you said, you're flipping pain into suffering. And it's so important for people to embrace challenges, embrace adversity, because if you don't, the moment adversity comes up in your life, which it's going to, you're going to live a full conscious life for 80 years, hopefully 100 years. Pain is going to happen. If you're not pursuing pain actively, something's going to happen in your life and you're going to be ruined by it. You're going to be absolutely destroyed. So actively pursue pain, and your baseline for that will just drop deeper and deeper and deeper.
Mate, that's it really. Like, do things that are difficult. Don't pursue the things that are easy. Pursue the things that are difficult. That's essentially what I learned. Yeah, mate. Yeah, that's essentially that's my takeaways. I think that's some value I can provide. I know you probably wanted me to speak more about diet and stuff like that. And there's a lot of people out. I think there's a lot of people who do speak about diet online. There's a lot of things you can learn. You can listen to Weston Price. There's a lot of people follow. I like Dave Asprey quite a lot. But if I can provide some of my own personal learnings, I think that's what I've learned. And so I think diet does come underneath it. So pursuing pain, it means doing the things that are difficult. Eating the right diet. The more you eat the right diet, the easier it becomes over time, and the better you feel. And that's essentially that's my takeaway. You pursue more pain, more discipline. You'll live a more fulfilling life. You'll live a life of meaning, and you will live a life of pleasure, because the opposite of pain is pleasure. And so I think it's also important to note: the more you pursue pleasure, the more you actually stunt your ability to experience pleasure. So there's something called dopamine sensitivity, and so the more if you're taking recreational drugs, if you're watching loads of porn and anything like that, you're eating junk foods, the more you eat them, the more the less your dopamine becomes desensitized to it. So you have to pursue bigger pleasures each time in order to be able to do it. And so when I find it difficult to work, when I find it difficult to focus, when I find it like I'm just overactive, what I do something called monk mode, which is I forgot his name, but online he talks about it. You essentially just abstain from everything. I won't eat, I won't listen to music, I won't use my phone, I won't do anything. And within a day, it's almost like you realize everything again in life. So yeah, I feel like, pursue pain, abstain from pleasures, and you will live a wonderful life. I know it doesn't seem like it's one of those things it doesn't make sense. Like, if I want pleasure, I just pursue pleasure. It doesn't. I mean, I feel like there's things in life that you should do which are meaningful. Like, of course, you should have those meaningful experiences, but you shouldn't make that the 90% of your life. And that's just the way I live personally. You know, people talk about balance in life. You know, they say everything's about balance. Like, well, if it means everything's about balance, okay, 20% family, 20% social life, 20% work, 20% health, 20%, you know, learning, however you want to split up, it means you don't really have time to pursue anything. I saw this concept which I liked a lot more, which is life's not actually about balance, life's about contrast. So like, for example, 90% work, really deep work, followed by a 10% deep rest, really deep rest. And I do prefer that principle. So I believe in like working really, really hard for like 90% of the time, abstaining from just pointless stuff. So, you know, like social media, like, is pointless if you're consuming, but if you're creating, it's quite useful. And then just, you know, switch off the notifications of your phone, eat really well, work out, and then during the 10% of the time, go fucking hard. Like, you know, enjoy life. And I believe that 10% will be a lot more meaningful.
For sure, that 10% then, if you've actually really sacrificed, you're going to appreciate that 10%. But it's what you said before, if you're constantly pursuing pleasure, then none of that's meaningful. You don't learn to appreciate it because that's your constant state of life. One thing I learned from, I did a 10-day silent meditation retreat. I don't know if I told you, Maxi.
How was, yeah, how, tell me about how was it?
The one thing I learned from that was that, oh my God, dude. So I'd been meditating for like 3 or 4 years before this, like coming up to an hour a day for 6 months prior before this meditation retreat. But I got there, mate, and the first day I sat down and I was meditating for 10 hours. And at the end of the day, you have these discourses, which is the meditation teacher does like, mate, yeah, it was even longer. So it's probably like 13 hours a day, 14 hours a day I was meditating. You're not allowed to speak to anyone. You're not allowed to do anything else, just meditate. And so the first day I sat there, and I was staring at the walls, and I was like having like a psychedelic trip. I was seeing all the walls like shape into eyes that will link together. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be tripping my nut off for like 10 days, lad. I'm like, this is sick. And, but the second day I woke up, mate, and I was like, oh no, I don't want to be here. I've got another 110 hours of meditating to go. And every day was just a constant battle with my mind. It was just seeing how negative your mind was. And like, there was no running away. I couldn't distract myself with my phone. I couldn't do anything else. I had to just sit there and observe the mechanics of my own mind. And mate, the one thing I really learned from it was that in times of stillness, in times of non-distraction, you figure out who you are and what life is about. And it is why a big reason why I put so much importance on meditating and like being mindful, because like all we have is moments in time. We don't have anything else. We're just constant present moments. And if you haven't got the attention to like actually appreciate these moments, you haven't got a life, because all that exists is the present moment. The past is dead. The future doesn't exist. So you've always got to anchor yourself in the now. And if you're constantly in a perpetual state of distraction due to social media, due to being stuck in your thoughts, whatever it may be, you're missing the essence of what is the whole point of being here. It was a crazy experience. I recommend you do one, Maxi. I think you would thrive in one, mate. No, it's mentally the hardest thing I've ever done, but you would smash one.
Mate, I'd love to try it. So, question. So after you come back from it, has like it stayed around? Because you said like, you know, being like mindful. Like, I think that's something I'm probably like. It's so difficult. It's so difficult to live in the moment. It's like you're always working, always in a state of sympathetic, like nervous system activation. You know, like so, like with yourself, like, do you find yourself now? Because like, mate, 10 hours a day, like 110 hours meditate, mate, that's extreme. That's a lot. Like, you know, that's life changing. Like, do you find that that's basically stuck with you? Like, once you've come back, do you find yourself like day to day actually like being present, or like how have you found that?
So the habit of my mind has been trained over how many years I've been alive to constantly be ruminating in my thoughts and attaching to every thought that comes up. So as much as this 10 days was amazing, it's not going to deprogram the whole 24 years of attaching to every thought that comes up. But one thing it has done is it stripped back layers of who I thought I was. I now realise that like, I had some mad experiences in this meditation retreat, mate. Like some experiences that I can't even explain. And it's really shown me that like everything that's going on in my mind isn't me. And every time I get stuck in these anxiety loops, every time I get stuck like craving junk food, there is a place from where I could just sit back and observe that. And due to the nature of reality, everything's always in flux. It's always changing. And when you can like really unidentify with this sense of self that we think is, well, you think is Maxi, what I think is Alex, when you can really sit back and watch that, like none of it has an effect over you. It's just like watching an itch on your arm. It's like watching a noise. It's like hearing a sound in your ears. It's just another sensation in your conscious experience. The only thing that makes it suffering, or the only thing that makes things bad, is our narrative that we're telling ourselves, and that's just a pure illusion. It's a choice again.
Yeah. The reason you're suffering is because you choose to suffer. I think that's one of the most profound things I learned from meditation. Which is, I wouldn't say I learned from mindfulness or meditation per se, but like I've learned to like almost look at myself in the third person and just like, you know, almost like a child and just like laugh at it, like, you know, like I don't like, honestly I don't really get upset by anything. Like I don't, but like, you know, like if like. Because, and I guess the reason for that is because, you know, I might experience an emotion, but then like the real me is the voice in the back of the head observing me, and not the person in front like experiencing it. So the person in the back of the head is like, oh, that's a funny emotion, like almost like taking it not very serious, taking life not very seriously in that sense. And the same thing as like when I was saying, like, you know, like when you have like these. When you're walking in these freezing cold places, t-shirt only, you know, you're these cold environments, experiencing this pain, you know, like you're doing these painful things. It's almost like you have to see yourself from a third person perspective and actually just like, you know, like your body experiences it, but like you don't. It's like, it's your body experiencing it, not you. Like, yeah.
Yeah, that painful moments, like the cold exposure, whatever it is, I think they are just ways of anchoring back to the present moment. I think the sensations are so extreme that it anchors you back to the present moment. You've got no other choice but to be there with the sensations that are going on. Like
pain is mindfulness. Pain is mindfulness. That's what I find really interesting. Is like I was trying to do yoga at one point, and I was just like doing all these like stretches, and I was just like, fuck, like, you know, like arm, leg up like this, like, you know, like the most inflexible person, and like then I felt amazing afterwards, and I realized, because you know when you meditate and you're focusing on your breath, you're focusing on being there in the present moment, you're scanning your body, and that's when I realized, like, fuck, pain is mindfulness, because like when you're experiencing pain, you, exactly as you said, you have no choice but to be present. Like, you have no choice. You are literally there in that moment. Mate, I experienced probably one of the most painful things in my life not too long ago. It was awful. Mate, it's a funny story actually. So basically, I sleep with earplugs because I'm like really sensitive to noise. You know, apparently Charles Darwin was as well, and so like I slept with earplugs and like this like white noise machine so I could go to sleep properly. Because if I hear any noises, like my heart just beats really fast. It's like I'm trying to fix it, but I can't find any like solution around it. I'm like doing like these what they call it, like hypnosis and stuff like that. It's called misophonia. Anyway, it's getting better and better. But anyway, mate, I got a piece of this. So it's like the silicone earplug, and I got a piece of the silicone earplug fucking stuck down my ear. And I was like, fuck, because this stuff was flush against my eardrum. So I bought one of these cameras online. You can buy on Amazon. So I was looking inside there, and I got this thing. So I'm sticking this camera inside. I'm like, well, this is interesting. I'm looking at this thing, and like, mate, it just got to the point my ear was like swollen, and so I was like, oh fuck, I gotta get this out. So I had to end up going. And mate, I'm busy at Biospan. I don't need this shit. You know, like, and so I had to go to like this small injury claim hospital in like Newton Abbot, and then they basically I got sent around in circles, and they said you have to go to A&E and like Torquay. So anyway, I ended up going A&E. They got me on pretty quickly there, and then I got into this room, and I have these people. Like, it was just this modern room with a fucking chair in the middle. I was like, oh no, oh no. And so I got in there, and this guy's like, oh, just sit down here. So I'm sat in this chair, this big camera looking at me. And then he's like, you know, we've got lots of tools to help you, lots and lots of tools. And like opens his drawer. It's got fucking scalpels, screwdrivers, hooks. It's almost like a torture chamber. And like, I was like, oh no, this is not good. And so like, then they've got this big camera going in, and this guy's just basically jabbing at your ear. And I'll tell you what, when your eardrum's inflamed, like, I will argue that your eardrum is probably the most sensitive part of your body, second to your eyeball. So like second to your pupil, like your eardrum is like the most sensitive part of your body, because it's like you touch your ear and your body's saying don't fucking touch that. You don't understand what you're about to ruin. Do not, do not. So the eardrum has to be sensitive, and he's just jabbing at my eardrum, just basically, and I'm sitting there like this like fucking jabbing at my eardrum, and like mate, it was like this one of the most painful things I ever experienced, and so like And anyway, he's like, we're gonna have to take you to the next room because, like, you know, I was moving my head too much. Like, I made it clear to him, like, I can stay still if you want me to. I will just sit there and experience it. However, my body is telling me move because it feels like you're literally ripping my eardrum apart. And so like, I go into this next room, and then there's this guy, and this guy has got this like fucking, and he's like the big boss guy, you know, like when they send you to the next guy. And so I sat in this chair, and he was like, and so he was talking to me. He's like, oh yeah, nice to meet you. So what is it you do? Oh yeah. And I was like, oh no, that's not good. Like the way he's speaking to you, like, oh yeah, that sounds really good. Oh yeah, tell me a bit more about that. He's like, fucking put this driver above my ear. Well, I do this, and like, like, you know, so essentially in this like two torture chambers for like this day, they're just going at my eardrum, basically just pulling it around. And I'll tell you what, mate, that was like, it wasn't fun, but like I was prepared to just sit there, and like I was moving my head because my body was telling me like, you're like, move your head. Like, mate, this isn't good for you. Like, move your head. Anyway, I managed to get it sorted out in a few days, and so like, we got it all out. But like, mate, like since we were on topic of pain, like, mate, that wasn't fun. I'll put it that way. That was not. It was not fun. It was not fun. But it was what like. But I was determined not to use anaesthetic. I was determined because I was just like, you know, like if I got myself into this situation, like I have to experience this pain, otherwise I will never learn my lesson. And so since then I haven't slept with earplugs, which is actually life changing because I slept with earplugs for 5 years. I was so sensitive to noise, and so like now I haven't slept with earplugs. It's like a huge development for me, not like actually not sleeping with earplugs. And because I just thought to myself, you know, mate, you have to experience this. So like going back to like the point of like people say like, you know, people have depression, anxiety, pain, stuff like that. It's like you don't understand. You have to experience this. Like, don't like, you know, you don't want to get PTSD, but like you have to experience this. Like, this is part of your journey. This is a part of your development. Do not medicate this. Like, this is here for a reason. This is a feature, not a bug. And so I tell you what, mate, because of that experience, I did not wear earplugs again. They're not wear those earplugs again. So I learned my fucking lesson, and that's why pain's there. That's why pain's there.
So, Maxi, when you're at the meditation retreat, right, they teach you a technique called Vipassana, which derives from the teachings of the Buddha. And it's all about just observing the bodily sensations and scanning the body. And, right, you're sat there cross-legged, right, for 15 hours a day. And I can't explain to you, right, it felt like someone was ripping my knee out of the socket. Like, it literally felt like someone was yanking my foot out. But it's weird, once you get to that point of consciousness, like you can see that your mind, the only reason why that pain exists is because your mind is anticipating that it's going to hurt in the next moment. And when you can come away from the thoughts of that, you can actually just observe the pain for not even pain. So I got to a point where my legs were like, it felt like I had a bomb in my legs, right? And then I had this realization that I'm up here and the pain's down there. And then as soon as I had that idea, the pain no longer existed. It was a sensation, but the idea that it was painful didn't exist. And I got to this mode of consciousness where I was just, I can't even explain to it. I wasn't me anymore. I was just reality, whatever the force and nature of reality is. I was just there observing all the sensations of that. And it's really weird how like that pain is still kind of just a narrative we're telling ourselves.
That must have been such a psychedelic experience. Like that must have been just mad. Like I can just imagine you're sitting there for 10 hours, like that, like just like basically just meditating. Like I listen to binaural beats, and sometimes like when I meditate, it's like you can see like astral projections and stuff like that, and you can see yourself. And so, mate, you must be in 10 hours. Mate, that must have been a fucking trip. Like, what was it like?
So I've done quite a lot of psychedelics in my time, just been like a little crackhead, always wanted to like altered state of consciousness. And this was the closest. This was more psychedelic than psychedelics. This was more real. I feel like what psychedelics do is they boot the door down of what you think reality is, and they show you this other world. But this was like hard earned. It was like every day I was becoming more aware, and it wasn't psychedelic in the way where I was seeing like mad visuals all the time. but it was psychedelic in the fact that I was becoming so aware of what consciousness was and reality was that like I felt like I was like a superhuman. And when I came out of this 10-day silent meditation retreat, I think you should do it, Maxi. I really think it would fucking blow your mind, lad. And I think you would figure some stuff out about your business, everything. Because we never get this time of stillness in this day and age. It's a lot to do. 10 days is a lot to take away from your life, but I can't think of anything else more worth it.
Mate, I've always wanted to do something like that, like go to Himalayas, just like sit with monks and just actually go through this like experience. Yeah, mate, I'd love to try it. Yeah,
I want to go straight to the Himalayas.
Yeah, I haven't really done anything like that. So like, what's your path now? And then, like, what's the next stage?
So I'm going to move to Manchester. I want to become a PT. So I've been wanting to do this for ages, but I've had a lot of self-limiting beliefs that I'm not like good enough to do it, which now I've come back from traveling, I've realized these are just obviously thoughts in my mind again. So I want to get really good at training people to be healthy, and not in the sense where I don't want to make money online yet. I don't want to pursue an online income until I have the skill of being able to transform someone's life through health and through like mindset. So for me, the next couple of years are just about really developing my skills, researching how to have a holistic health with body and mind, spirit and everything, and how to be a good person. I want to be able to change people's lives through that, and then eventually I'll go online and then I'll make a big income from whatever. So that's my plan at the moment.
Interesting. I feel like you can get imposter syndrome. I like the content you're making online. I think the direction you're doing is absolutely amazing. I think you just basically got to keep doing it, mate. Like, just like, what I've learned is like a big difference, and I learned this from Biospan, is there's a big difference between personal trainers and like nutritionists, for example. So like nutritionists are really good, and they can build a program for you, but personal trainers build like a different role. And the role personal trainers play isn't just like actually training you, like I don't know what to do with to train. It's accountability. It's almost like a coaching aspect. It's like someone actually getting you over the finish line. It's like I think that's the real value I've seen in a personal trainer, in a sense that even at Biospan, like we have nutritionists, but like there's a role for personal trainers, even if the personal trainer literally did not train you. It's because like of what they actually do in coaching and like being able to get you to take the next action step. It's almost like a life coach in a sense. It's someone like just helping you basically get to the next stage. So yeah, I think personal training is actually super underrated. And I realized this by actually working in Biospan. It's super underrated.
Yeah, there's a thing, Maxi, where they did a study where they've shown more people lose weight with therapists than they actually do with personal trainers. And that, for me, just shows that it's all about the relationships we have with food, with exercise. And that's one big component I want to like really dig in with myself and my clients when I eventually get some. It's like I'm not coming in to fucking beast you 3, 4, 5, 6 times a week. I want you to actually enjoy yourself, develop a good relationship with your own identity, and actually have a good relationship with exercise. And that's what all I want to do, mate. I just want to try and make a positive impact on the world, as you do as well. But Maxi, what do the next 5 years look like for you? What do you think like the next 5 years of Biospan are like?
Fucking expand across the world. I think that's the next stage. I mean, I'm growing my team constantly. I'm not sure if we'll raise investment or not. I don't know at this point. But yeah, I think I'm just going to keep growing the business, and I'm just going to keep innovating. To be honest, I feel like because when you actually have a business, it gets quite scary because it's like you could lose it. Like I feel being aware of my own mortality is what made Biospan work for me. It actually has been one of the best things because I started working within the confines of reality of what's possible to do in the business, as opposed to trying to bend reality to my rules. And because I was working in the confines of reality, I was taking the right actions, which actually led to growth. And I can talk about that, I guess, at another time, like what that actually means. But yeah, I think I want to keep innovating because the only way for you to stand out in the market is to essentially keep innovating. So innovating, growing across other countries, and I believe building my online presence as well personally. So I believe that's what's going to end up happening. I believe I'm probably going to build quite a big channel over the course of these next 5 years. I believe I'm going to build quite a big team. I think Biospan's going to be in Europe, America, really across the world. I believe we're going to have some really valuable technology. I believe I'm going to have a really big team, and I'm just stepping back more. Like my role is becoming more and more like coaching, as opposed to actually operating. Like I'm building a team around this idea. And yeah, I think that's probably my next 5 years. I'm hoping by 5 years time. My goal was to be a millionaire by the time I was 25. That was my goal. I believe by the time I finish 25, that'll be achieved. But my next goal, I guess, over these next 5 years, or rather 10-year horizons, probably become a billionaire. That's my objective, because I don't see what else I do with life. Like, I've got all this fucking time. Like, what else am I going to do? Like, so yeah, I've basically done some quite meticulous planning around Biospan on how it can become a $1 billion company, and I'm currently just executing that strategy. And I mean it. Like, I don't mean this tacitly, like saying like, oh yeah, we've got this plan. I mean, like, I literally have a plan on how to make this like one of the most valuable food and health companies in the world. And this is like a proper strategy that's based on like, and I believe it's going to be achieved. And I'm basically executing this strategy right now, and I think it's going to take a long time. But all I've got is time, and I'm just basically, as insurance, I'm just making sure the company is A, profitable, because it means it has money coming through, and B, innovating, because it means that people keep using your service versus somebody else's. And so I'm always my philosophy of Biospan is I'm not competing against somebody else. I'm competing against myself. So I will undercut my own service with a new model of my own service to beat my own service, because I believe providing the best service possible for the customers. So like I'm always trying to beat my own business, and just make it better and better and better, and just move at speed. So that's my next 5 years. That's my next 5 years. In terms of personal life, I'm going to be moving to London at some point. I would like to travel a bit more, find some more partners, make some good friends, relationships, spend more time with family, and I'd like to make a few more, a few bases around the world. I'd like to start probably living some more places outside the UK, and having probably more of a global presence. Yeah, I mean, I'm super excited. The thing of building a business is it's just like everything just takes forever. Well, it just feels like it takes forever until it doesn't take forever. Like with Biospan, it just shot off. Like I was speaking to my family the other day. It was like, do you remember this time last year we were in Portugal, and I was like running around like a headless chicken because I had one customer. And I was running around like a headless chicken. my chef flaked on us. She got the times wrong. I had to refund the customer. I had to do loads of things. We had to find suppliers. Now it's just like running like clockwork. I almost do nothing. I can not turn up for like an entire week, and the business would run without me. It would still keep acquiring customers. It would still take payments. It would still be servicing customers. Like it's pretty much at that point now where it just operates on its own, and I'm just focusing on just growing it. So I feel like the next phase of my life probably is just a lot more content growth. That's me. Yeah.
Maxi, I'm just going to say, mate, like you have actually, obviously we've not really spoke since from uni, but you've been a huge inspiration for me just looking from the outside of what you're doing. You was the one that inspired me to start Amazon FBA. I started a bit, although it failed, it was my first go into business.
I remember that.
And yeah, 100%, mate, it failed. It didn't go very well, but it was you've always just been kind of a thing that like you're the same age as me, and I've always been like, what's Maxi doing? Look at him growing a business, and I've just took a lot of inspiration from you. So like, dude, when you say you're going to be a billionaire, I have fucking no doubt that that's going to happen, man. You will be a billionaire, lad. I have no doubt in my mind.
Thank you. Mate, thank you. No, I mean every word I say. So like, I don't think I think like you need to say it with conviction. I say it with conviction. Like I mean what I say. So like. Mate, like, and mate, same with you. It's been a pleasure. Like, it's funny because like during uni, like, we were in the same group and everything. I always liked you, but like, we never spoke too much. And I feel like we built a bigger relationship actually outside of university. I feel like we extended an olive branch somewhere along the way. And like the same way, you inspire me. Like, I love seeing what you do. You're growing. Like, what you just 10-day like retreat. What the groups you're going to in London and the way you're going, mate. Like, I'm so like. Yeah, and not everyone. Like the thing is, it's a lonely path, and not everyone joins the path. And like, I'm hoping like that you're going to be on this path and like towards like betterment and just like becoming something. And like, I'm happy that we've extended an olive branch and we've been able to connect. And like, I see us doing probably more content in the future and just growing. Yeah, So yeah,
for sure, Maxi. We'll have to keep in touch, mate. I think that's a big goal of mine, to have more people that are like-minded and are on this journey. And I think me and you, we get along really well anyway. So I think it'd be important for us to stay in touch, because the people you know, the people you share the whole journey with, and I think it adds a lot of value to every aspect of your life, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, mate, thank you for having me on board.
For sure, Maxi, that was a good podcast, mate. That was. I know it's split up a little bit and we lost connection a few times, but that was a good podcast.
Yeah, I prefer the conversations to the interviews. Like the conversations are so much better than the interviews. It's like you see what I mean? Like because I'm looking into content myself at the moment, and I feel like you're naturally going to cover the stories you want over progression, and I think it's a lot more valuable. For example, if I cover these topics that I'm looking to, like, because I drop knowledge bombs whilst covering other topics as a byproduct, as opposed to actually addressing them directly, if you know what I mean. And so it's just like, address them over a period of time, unless you're making like an actual video. But I think that's what's worked better for me. I guess what depends what works good for you and like what. But for me, like, when I'm on the spot, like interview, it's like I don't really know what to say. I guess I just I have some stories, but it might not come out in the right order. It's just like you get what you get in the podcast, and it's like done.
No, that was the best podcast I've recorded so far, and that was because it was more conversation as well. Obviously, you've got loads of information to have as well, but because it was a natural conversation, like your intellectual curiosity just kind of flows, and you just like you just let the stories come out instead of being very rigid. So yeah, definitely that's something I'm going to start doing now. It's just more conversation.
Yeah, I think the conversations are, because people like, you watch Joe Rogan, he's having a conversation, not an interview. Like, you know, like you look at these podcasts, right? The best ones are conversations, not interviews. Yeah.
For sure. Right, Maxi, I'm going to finish the podcast. I appreciate you coming on, mate. I know you're a busy guy, so to take up an hour and a half to record my podcast, I really appreciate it, mate.
Oh no! I thought you stopped recording there. I thought that was.
I know we're going to stop recording now. You're only free.
You can.
Yeah, there's